Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. That's what we are, at the very least. Um, I don't. Just as an aside, I don't know if you've ever been to Uncle Julio's. I don't know if you saw those pictures. I posted a couple of pictures. It's like good friend, decided wanted to celebrate my birthday. What was it? 3 weeks late. So went over to Uncle Julio's, and one of the people there had ordered that chocolate pinata thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty amazing, I got to say. I mean, it's $30 for that thing, though, but it's an interesting thing, and I guess it must be fairly popular because the table behind us and the table over there, they both ordered it too,
Oh,
and all of
wow.
that. Yeah. So yeah, I was, I brought some of the leftovers home to my wife yesterday and everything like that. I mean, it's fruit. It's basically filled with fruit and little mini churros, and then just the hard chocolate shell. But
Oh, wow.
uh, I do have to say one thing because I know this person's probably not going to be watching this. But so there was another person at our table last night, and taking home the leftovers, which I mean, you can always take home a doggy bag of stuff. I mean, one of the other guys didn't really eat his plate, so he took that. But the thing that really got me last night was that he took home the uneaten portion of someone else's food who'd already eaten from that bowl, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you're nuking it, I guess.
I guess maybe that's it. But I'm thinking like, okay, the last thing that ever crosses my mind is that if this person is not my spouse or significant other, something like that, that food is going, that's gone.
Right. Right. Yeah. Other people's food. I've never done that one before.
I'm still trying to sort this out. This has been bothering me all night, all morning. It's weird. This is like, I can't believe I saw this.
It's like you think differently of this person, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just eating food, dude."
Yeah, no, I mean, no, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, that's just
You're
an
talking
aside. It was
about
just,
my Thursday lunch here.
that's right. I don't know. I don't know. I just can't handle that. I guess it's just not
Yeah, that
part of
one's
me.
gonna be that's a little different there.
All right. So on to the news.
Where
The
things
real
are
news.
less messed up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But Joe Biden, President Biden. So, he came out with, I guess you could say it was some strong words. I mean, he was blasting the Republicans on this whole debt ceiling issue. Said that if they didn't take care of it, didn't fix this thing, that there's going to be like what a meteor crashing into the economy. I mean, lots of dire words and warnings and things like that, which probably doesn't help the stock market, which is this is never really a great time for the stock market anyway, but you're probably making them even more nervous by throwing those things out. But the bottom line about the debt ceiling, which we're now down to, what is it, October 6th? They said what it was an October 18th deadline, is that the Senate parliamentarian has already told them, right, that they can actually go ahead and vote on this, and they don't, which means that they don't need any Republican votes, right? I mean,
Right.
Biden's trying to make this whole case that, oh, but we don't, the Republicans are standing in the way of
They're
this.
blocking it. They're not blocking it. It's not blocked. All you got to do is come up with 50 votes, and that's their problem. It's not
Yeah,
our problem. It's their problem. The Democrats don't have the votes for this, right?
yeah. Well, I
There's
mean,
no reason that we should lift them over the finish line. And and like we've talked about this before, everybody wants to, you know, rag on Mitch, all the time. But look, Mitch has been brilliant in this, right? He has all his people in order, complete discipline and message, and they told them months ago this is what's going to happen and this is what you had to prepare for, and they weren't able to do it, and they don't. It may be that the votes do not exist in the U.S. Senate to raise the debt ceiling, and we may have to be looking at this from the other way around, which is, what does happen if you don't raise the debt ceiling? Because we always just consider it inevitable. Some compromise will get reached, and Trump was masterful at people don't think he dealt well with Congress, but he took himself out of that. He was not the firebrand of that, right? Steve Mnuchin did most of it. And so it was very low wattage and off the out of the spotlight and so forth that he negotiated with Congress. But these things happened routinely and with very little news made, right? And Biden's, he's blaming other people for his inability to negotiate with people in his own party. That's whose fault is that, right?
Right.
They can blame Sinema and Manchin, but like do something that gets them over the finish line, right? That's how politics works.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's 50-50 in the Senate, and they have Kamala Harris as the tie-breaking vote. Reconciliation, that's all they need. They just
requires
need
50.
And I don't right, and I don't even think that on debt ceiling, I don't think that Sinema and Manchin, would vote against us. I think they would go ahead and say, yeah, go ahead and raise it or suspend or do whatever we need to do. We can kick the can down the road while we resolve these other issues. But as part of the problem here is that if they go to reconciliation, that also means that a bunch of other things can be or should be voted on. And there are other items out there apparently that are not things that the Democrats want to vote on, but then would actually come along. I mean, this is what Biden was saying the other day without basically saying this, which was, there's a lot of things that don't have anything to do with the debt ceiling that come along with this. What he didn't say was that those things are things that the Democrats don't want to pass. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have that come to a vote. They don't want to, they don't even want to vote on it, but it would come up as a result of reconciliation and the whole debt ceiling thing. So in the meantime, they're trying to squeeze the Republicans publicly, saying they're being obstinate. They're not pushing it. But as you said, there is absolutely no reason with this ability with the ability for them to actually go ahead through reconciliation and pass the debt ceiling and figure this out for the Republicans to say, why do we have to do anything?
Right.
The Democrats are the majority. They have control over this. This is not the Republicans' problem.
It's not. And, you can argue that we should quit raising debt ceiling. And maybe it's time to have that argument. And we may be about to have that argument because the path out of this does not look clear to me. I think Manchin, there's a number, because what happens once they vote, the problem on reconciliation, of course, is if you do it that way, then like they have to make the entire reconciliation bill now. They have to get, come to the final agreement on the top and bottom line numbers of this now. And that's what they're really kind of not prepared to do. They're still wanting to fudge on, what the government's going to actually spend, right? The budget resolution is in there. So, that's the thing that they don't want to take the hard vote on, and they don't want to be, solely responsible for raising the debt ceiling because they believe that'll be a problem in the 2022 election. And if you believe that will be a problem, maybe, we don't pass $3.5 trillion more. And, Steve Moore says it's actually about $6 trillion when you add it all up and all the money it takes out of the economy. And, maybe we just focus on the actual infrastructure bill or neither. Right. And, that's not, this is their big shot. If they don't get it done by, next November, it's not going to happen. So, I think that if it were me, I would do something that gets you over the hump, and I would take the Senator Manchin's recommendation that the rest of this be done in 2022. Sever it off. You want to make big changes. You haven't had enough debate, right? The problem is, the far left has got its stuff in this bill, and what passes for centrists in the Democrat Party, which they're really pretty hardcore leftists, but they're not on the same page. So get on the same page. Get you a continuing resolution that doesn't take us over the debt ceiling. And work from there. But they want to do this all now, and they want to do it and not have to take the blame for the votes. You're not going to get to do that.
So here, this is one question I want to ask you about, though, too, is that, considering that, we generally have a kind of a history of raising the debt ceiling or suspending the debt ceiling, dealing with it later. What's the value of the debt ceiling if we do this? I mean, it seems like, it just seems like this exercise that we go through. It's like, okay, we'll raise the debt ceiling or we'll suspend the debt ceiling. I mean, does the debt ceiling have any real importance anymore in today's world?
Well, yeah, I think it tells bond investors, the people who buy the debt, you know, what we're willing to do and what's out there and what the value of those bonds is going to be. So, and it, you know, cost of borrowing and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with that from that perspective. But you know, on the other, you know, my devil's advocate thing says that, okay, you know, sure, you know, it kind of gives you, or at least maybe gives the bond investors a kind of this little level of comfort or a false sense of security that's going to happen, because anybody knows when you look at history is that it just keeps getting bumped up or
Right.
whatever. So you know, it's really not showing. We don't have any fiscal discipline when it comes to this whole thing overall. I mean, it's always we just, you know, I mean, we just continue to spend, you know, for whatever, depending upon which party's in power and everything like that. But you know, and I don't know if any other countries actually have a debt ceiling like the U.S. This seems to be a little bit more unique to us than other countries.
Well, other countries, who else is $28 trillion in debt? It hasn't exactly bound us too much, right?
Right, exactly right. I mean, that's the thing. It is this thing that it's kind of a political football, right? I mean, that we go through, it really winds up just, that's all it, you know, kind of just a symbolism that, you know, we have a debt ceiling, a big deal.
Yeah. And not everybody discovers their debt principles when these things come, right?
Right.
And now Republicans are again discovering that they're not for it, and Democrats are discovering that we can't do without it. And, you know, so like, you know, back in the Trump administration, or especially the W administration, you know, Democrats could not, you know, we cannot have another raising of the debt ceiling, right? We must stop this fiscal irresponsibility now, right? So, you know, everybody does their thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, and you know, and you know, with all the spending they want to do here, I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, Steve Moore talking about, you know, it doesn't really cost. It costs far more than expected. That was something I remember seeing in the Wall Street Journal. They, you know, they kind of laid that out. Then, but you also have Jen Psaki pushing back, saying, "It's like, well, yeah, it's really zero. I mean, it's not going to cost anybody who makes less than $400,000 anything. I mean, what kind of an argument is, you know?"
Well, I think part of their problem is they are making arguments that people look at and say that's nonsense, right? Or some other word sort of means the same thing. And you know, that's what's getting them in trouble, is people are waking up to the fact that there really is no man behind the curtain, right? There really is, you know, they really don't have an excuse for all this. And you know, I don't know what would happen if we raise the debt ceiling. You know, we're always warned about, if we don't, I mean, we're always warned about how horrible that would be. You know, maybe it's time to find out how horrible that would be, because, you know, the economy's not in good shape anyway. And maybe it's time to say, okay, you know, we have hit the wall. I mean, I think that could be politically good for the Democrats to say, okay, you know, we accept the opinion of the voters as expressed to their elected representatives. And, you know, there will be no debt ceiling increase, and we're going to live within our means. I mean, imagine the political power of that. Yeah, you'd have to cut some stuff, and the cuts would be, you know, they would be partisan cuts. They would cut probably military and, you know, things that the right is generally for. And then when conservatives got in power, they would cut things the left is generally for. But, you know, the pressure would be downward instead of ever upward. So, you know, I don't know. It may be a shock when it happens. You know, you'd have 4 or 5 bad days on the stock market, but then people would say, hey, America's starting to live within its means. I think that could be really powerful politically for whoever actually has the courage to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an economist, so I don't want to go out too much out on the ledge about exactly how this is going to work out. I mean, there's definitely lots of doomsday, you know, prognostications going on about this whole thing. You know, for me, I'd rather not see it. But, you know, one of the other problems I see too with all of this is just that, you know, we've talked about the inflation problem that's, you know, circling around the Biden administration, that the transitory inflation doesn't seem to be transitory at all.
Right.
Inflation is slowly tapering off, but it's tapering, you know, it's coming down. It's still at a level that is far too high.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about it's tapering off from record-breaking levels to still extremely high levels, right?
Right.
And this is inflation we have not seen since the Carter administration.
Right. And, you know, and part of the problem here, you know, and this will relate to the debt ceiling too, is just that as a result of this, you know, we're seeing, you know, bond yields, rise, which is not good for the stock market. Stock market thrives on low yields because it makes stocks, particularly tech stocks, an attractive investment, because most tech stocks pay little or no dividends. So if you're getting virtually nothing on your money anyway in bonds or savings, then you might as well take a flyer on stocks. But as they start to rise, they start to be competitive, and that also means that we've gone through this remarkable period of very low interest rates, which have helped the government fund themselves at a very low cost. Those rates start to rise, and if they actually start to hit another level that they haven't seen in years, our debt service, the interest on our debt service, is just going to skyrocket,
Right.
And that's going to be yet another issue. We
actually got to a point where, for a considerable period of time, where it was cheaper not to balance the budget, right? It was cheaper to finance it through debt because the debt was so cheap to have. So, that's removing a guardrail, to say the very least.
Yeah.
It creates moral hazard. There's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah. So it's just a real problem, and as far as Manchin, we've talked about how, he wants to see this push the spending, some of the stuff off to 2022, because he can just see, what a disaster this would be for the Democrats if they pass. But I still think the Democrats are blowing the opportunity where Manchin has put, he's put out a counter proposal, still spending money that I wish we wouldn't spend to begin with. But the Democrats at this point, take the $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion or $2 trillion or whatever they want to come up with. You get that through, at least Biden can claim some sort of victory on his part about, oh, look, we've done this, and then he gets Manchin and probably Sinema on board for that. And then they deal with the rest, post 2022 election. That might work, but Pelosi, they've been very stubborn.
Before you go, let me say one thing about what you just said. One is, Manchin has now said, here's a number I could possibly accept. And for one thing is that, so, the Democrats, what they are doing is trading top line numbers, right? 3.5 trillion down to 2.1 trillion or whatever. He won 1.8 or 2.1 or whatever he finally settled on yesterday. Okay. But when you're talking about how much money to spend, people don't get that, okay, we're buying X, Y, and Z with that money, right? The Democrats want to keep the conversation on, the things that they're providing with that money, right? So, that's part of the thing. The other thing is, Sinema has not, to my knowledge, given a price. He has not said, if we get it to this number, I'll vote for it. Her stance, as I understand it, is she doesn't support this bill. Obviously, it's a budget blueprint. So, something's going to have to pass if it's only a continuing resolution, or after, when did the last debt extent CR went to what, early December?
Yeah, I think so.
I guess they have to early December to come up with, a spending resolution for the next year. And it may only be a continuing resolution. It may only be, kind of keep doing what you're doing, give everybody a 3% jump or whatever, but that's she has not set a number. I don't know that they can get to a number that she would vote for. I don't know that number exists. I think she's kind of on principle against this whole thing. So the whole Build Back Better, both pieces of legislation.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because the most of the focus has been on Manchin, because he's really kind of led the way and thrown these things out there. But we haven't really heard a lot from Sinema, saying that, yeah, I'm with Joe. If you do this, I'm on board. I don't recall anything publicly that she said about that. So, which means that we will also segue into the people chasing Sinema into a bathroom and yelling at her, and harassing her, I think, at an airport. She's been on a plane.
Yeah, on a plane. It's like, the plane people are pretty good about policing up anybody that lets their mask fall below their nose. But, here you have people haranguing a passenger on your aircraft repeatedly and filming the whole encounter, and they just sat there and let it happen. People are on a plane, and the thing about that is, like, if you want to engender support, I'm sure that, the good amount of leftists watched that happen and cheered it on, right? But if you want to engender support, go to some place. Will you commit to doing the thing you said you won't do? Will you commit? Will you commit to doing this and providing this and so forth? I mean, that's an easy question to say no to. Like, I'm not going to just be bullied into doing this. So, I mean, I think this kind of stuff kind of gives Sinema, an out, right? It makes her look kind of like a victim in a way of, the constant harassment, and I think that she doesn't strike me as the kind of person who's going to say, I can't listen to this for long. I'm just going to give into it, right? Like, Flake and those kind of guys that they were, the first time someone yelled at them, they were ready to capitulate. I don't see that in her. I don't think she cares. I think she thinks what she thinks. And, sometimes it's going to favor us and sometimes it's not. But I don't think she's politically driven, and I don't think she's susceptible to that kind of pressure.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. I mean, the thing too is that, she's not up for re-election, I think, until 2024.
Yeah, they're talking about primary, and good luck with that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially, I mean, if you were looking at primarying her based on things that are going on today, yeah, good luck with that. As you said, victim. I mean, that makes her, to me, because in the way that Arizona has generally been trending, that makes her an even more sympathetic person, candidate. So it would make it actually harder, I think, for the Republicans to put up someone against her, because she stood up against all these people and shown a little bit more independence and said, look, I haven't kowtowed to the Democrats and the leftists on all the spending and all these kind of things. We still have years before, she comes up for re-election. There's still time. But right now, I'd say she's sitting in a very good spot. And then to have the president, trying to basically say this is part of the process. I mean, if you don't have, Secret Service, protection like I do, this stuff is going to happen. I mean, like, come on.
So a couple of things about that is one is, okay, apparently, that's sort of where McCain was. And I don't want to compare to, a despicable traitor scumbag like McCain, because she's a far more honorable person. But she, that's sort of where you have to be in Arizona. It's like, I'm a member of one of the parties, but I'm willing to stand apart from the party when I feel it's in the interest of Arizonans, right? That's sort of the way senators have to act from Arizona. It's not really a red or blue state. And so you're balancing interests. And a lot of times, like, I do a little bit of work that ends up looking like it's for the other side, is not a terribly unpopular place to be in Arizona, among Arizona senators. The other thing is, what Biden said was, though, he said it was totally inappropriate. And that kind of part of the quote kind of gets clipped, right? But he did say that, hey, if you don't have Secret Service warding those people off, that's going to happen. And that's true. But my thing to say to that is, when is the last time there was a conservative doing that to a Democrat? Right? I don't know. Maybe it happens more than we think. But when you have the extreme harassment, right? It is Democrats. You have Maxine Waters telling them to beat up people on the street. The Red Hen restaurant, that was a Democrat doing it to a Republican. Going up to, Ted Cruz in the restaurant. Remember all this? They used to just harass people all over town, right? All the time, right? Hey, you're a Republican. We're going to get at you and yell at you in public and ruin your supper and all that kind of stuff, right? It's always them doing it to us. So when you say, well, it's part of the process, no, it's part of the Democrat process, right? To do political debate in places it's inappropriate to do it. That's pretty much a one-party thing from what I know. Somebody knows differently, please email us in and we talk about it. But, that's a Democrat tactic.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think that Biden just, I mean, he could have been a lot stronger on this. And, and really, I mean, this is a member of his own party. This is a key senator that he needs.
Yeah. And somebody you're trying to talk into doing something. Maybe you take that opportunity to say, hey, senator who I'm trying to talk into doing something was unfairly attacked, right? And we're trying to make this right, but he didn't. He's like, yeah, whatever, part of the process, So their thing is, it's a strategy of the Democrat Party to send this type of harassment at the people that it's trying to convince of things, right? I mean, it's not a strategy of the Republican Party to try to affect public policy in this way, but it is of the Democrats. So, I mean, they need to look at themselves. I mean, they're the ones out of bounds on normal political conduct, and they can, justify it however they want. Oh, we really need this bill passed. There's always some bill that we really need passed, right? That's not an excuse.
Right. And and I understand, I mean, First Amendment, free speech. I mean, they can go out there and I mean, people on both sides have been harassing each other for a long time. But one of my bigger problems too is that, when you go into the bathroom, I mean, I just think there's, you can go up to a person if they enter the bathroom, whether or not they actually needed to go, whether they're just trying to escape. That to me, that's just like, that's a wall, that's a border. Okay, don't cross that line.
Yeah,
and these
stand outside the bathroom when she comes back out.
Stand outside, exactly.
Right back at it. But
what they did, to me, was really despicable. I mean, that was just terrible.
But only part of it is that they went in the bathroom after her, right? Part of it is the nature of the rhetoric. Listen to the words the girl spoke. It's like, you are expected to do this, and you're not doing what you're expected. Why won't you do what's expected, right? Which is to vote the money. Right. So, and I have my sob story, and I'm not backing off my sob story. And, it's utterly uncheckoutable, right? Your sob story, your parents are somewhere else and your grandfather died, in some other country and whatever. And, you couldn't go because of immigration policy. I mean, what does that mean? Right. So the whole thing was suspect, but the demand that you hand us money, your job is to vote us the money. Not even thinking about it.
And they're talking to her while she's in the stall. I mean, it's like this whole thing is just like, what the heck?
To her credit, she's perfecting the art of ignoring them. So
that's good for her. Once again, she's wind up looking like the victim, and that's going to go over very well with a lot of people.
That's right.
And also that the left has gone too far. And just showing how much Biden and the Democrats have just kowtowed to this. They're willing to kind of put up with this behavior when they should have been outright condemning it and defending the senator that they really need on their side. Unbelievable. First Monday in October occurred this week, which means a new Supreme Court. When I saw this at first, I'm like, whoa, how time has passed so fast. I mean. Right.
When was summer? Did we skip summer this year?
Normally I feel like, it has been, 2-3 months several months between the time they end their term and they issue their final decisions and the start of the new term. This time around, I didn't feel like we had that separation. I think part of it was that we had some interim rulings that were coming that they were dealing with,
they call it shadow docket.
Yeah. And so that as a result of that, it seemed like they were never really out, but they were out officially. And so it seemed more so than ever that this was continuation. But
that's one of those, what they've used that shadow docket for, and I think this is important, though, is COVID cases, right? Challenges to COVID mandates and all that kind of stuff. And they've just kind of said, no, whatever they say, you got to do. And, we're not to ruling on this yet. So get out of our face. But at some point, someone's going to bring a case that they cannot treat like that.
So I mean, just they'll be listen. They'll have a bunch of cases that they'll have to listen to and things that they'll decide which case to take. I mean, do you think this is going to be an important term for them?
I do. I think there's two that everybody's watching. One is Mississippi's 15-week heartbeat abortion bill. I don't think that it's going to pass. I think it'll be stricken down. I don't think, unless they find new law to base striking it down on, I don't see it happening. I think to uphold that law, you'll have to change how Roe is looked at to do it. Because under Roe, I don't think, to me, it's fairly clear cut that Mississippi will lose. The other one, though, I think is more interesting is, and you know a lot about this stuff, is gun issues in New York State. there's may issue and shall issue, right? You apply for a concealed carry permit. In a lot of states, the law says shall issue. The law enforcement people, unless they can prove you're a violent criminal or whatever, they shall issue you the license. It's not really up to them, right? They're just processing the forms. But New York is a may issue state. So they take your application and they evaluate your need for a handgun or to be able to carry concealed or whatever. And then if you want it, if they deem you, an appropriate person to do this, then they allow you to have a gun, right? And that's being challenged. And if that prevails, and I think that one, the right does have a pretty good chance at, that changes gun laws all over the country. And anybody who wants to carry a gun will be able to do it. It'll be very hard to stop that legislatively anymore.
Yeah, that'll be a fascinating case to see, because it's the discretion of the authorities to determine whether or not you get a gun, even though you've shown that you're actually sane, you're very capable, you're going to be you've taken courses or whatever the other requirements are, when you're going to be that subjective, it's just not the right way to do things. And all. So
you've got to satisfy the state that your situation is risky. I mean, that's not fair. That's, you're the one who knows whether it's risky,
Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be fascinating to see how this goes. And I think that, we've got a good chance to see how, Barrett and Kavanaugh do in this term as well. I think a lot of eyes will be on them as well for different things. And you mentioned the Mississippi bill. I mean, I think the conservatives are going to look to find other, kind of pro-life type of bills, laws to challenge and things like that, things that they can build up there to kind of chip away more at Roe v. Wade and everything like that. So we will see that it begins now, and we've got what? So they go for what until they normally issue their final rulings right around the end of June or thereabouts.
Last week of June, is when they usually break up.
Yeah,
so it's about 80 cases a year they do.
Yeah, so no matter what, tremendous work on the part of the Supreme Court, and the liberals couldn't get Breyer to retire, so they're probably still unhappy.
Yeah,
and didn't get what they wanted. All right, now you have talked about this to a certain degree, as we've talked about, who's got who's back and all this stuff. After Afghanistan. China ramping up their kind of threats on Taiwan. They sent some jet fighters running some sorties or whatever over there.
Like 150 jet fighters into their airspace.
Yeah, and I guess Biden has issued a stern letter to Xi or whatever. But what's going on here?
Well, I mean, they sense weakness. And China has always made a practice that each new president, they do something somewhat provocative just to see, if we can handle it. Now you have a president who has, fumbled the border, basically forfeited the war in Afghanistan to the enemy, for we were ahead and we just decided to forfeit, right? And we look weak, and we looked weak at G7, and we look weak in the energy markets now. We've allowed, Russia to regain its foothold over, European energy supplies. And, people smell blood in the water, and you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to, guess who's running Bagram Air Force Base now that we gave it up? The Chinese, right? They're like, hey, we can use that, and it's a huge strategic asset, in an important part of the world. And we basically punted it so, Joe Biden could have a photo op on September 11th. So, there's going to be more and more of this until something happens that we're forced to stand up to it. And the bigger it gets, the bigger the thing that we're going to have to knock down is. It's a troubling time in the world.
Yeah, and just very predictable that what happened. I mean, I think, as Biden, the whole thing with Afghanistan, as that whole thing, played out, I think that just, that emboldened China even more. They have been there, they're out there, they've already clamped down and, on Hong Kong. They're saying like, okay, now we've kind of got that under control. Now we want, we've been trying to get Taiwan back in the fold for a long time. And this may be one of our better chances to do so because the U.S. has given us such a huge opening on this. And
right. And we don't have the political will. Remember, Biden said a few weeks ago, he slipped up and said that we would defend Taiwan, and then came out the next day and said, oh, no, we misstated there. Right? We have the actual democracy in the region. Maybe, we don't want to piss off the Chinese.
Yeah, unbelievable. Also, did you see this thing about with the Taliban? I think they're now going to limit the girls' education to 5th grade. I mean, not unexpected.
More than they had, right? I'm telling you, man.
Well, more than
right. It was more than they had before we showed up the first time. I'm telling you, these societies are not going to catch up to the West until they start taking advantage of the talent of their women. It's not going to happen, right? The reason we're ahead of them is that we empower our women. We have twice the human capital that the other countries do because we let the women be part of it, right? The West lets the women be. That's why the West is faring better than the rest of the world. We actually use, access a lot more. 40 or 50% more of the talent available to us.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not totally unexpected because we've talked about how the Taliban was going to go back in time to what was I saying, like 7th century or something like that. So this doesn't surprise us based on what they've done so far. But once again, I just have to say this is a tragedy. The U.S. had done so much, and the people of Afghanistan made so much progress, particularly the women. From having a women's soccer team to the education side, all the things that are going on there, out the window. I mean, it's that it's terrible. I just feel for those people, and I mean, some of the women are speaking out. Of course, they're, they can't. They have to be very careful about how this is all reported and done. Because of the retaliation that the Taliban is likely to get on them for that. But I just, once again, I'm not hearing a whole lot from the Biden administration on this. They're
banning the women of Afghanistan, banning the women in the U.S. Right? As soon as guys wanted to play girls' sports, like we like that better than we like you.
Yeah. So. And even by taking in all these Afghans, even if you vet them and try to integrate them, this is going to be kind of a long haul because they were so used to they have so many different cultural standards. Trying to just get used to some of the U.S. standards of our ways, we're still far ahead of where we left Afghanistan. Though had made a great deal of progress, some of this is still going to take a while between language and culture and everything like that. For those that have entered this country. But once again, we've got Afghans running around, we've got the Haitians running around. It's like what I don't know. It's like what's the next?
Supposedly 400,000 people or whatever coming up from Panama or somewhere.
Oh, is that next? Jeez,
a huge caravan. See, that's the other thing. It's like people don't want to give Trump credit, but he had all that taken care of, right? He had made deals with all those countries to keep their people in their country. So there wasn't a big fight on our border every day. It was borders south of ours. And, first day Biden was president, we got rid of that because, it had Trump's name on it.
Yeah. And if you're border patrol, which has already been kind of undermanned, underfunded, you now get these huge surges like this. You can't handle this. I mean,
that's right.
It's impossible. So you're only going to demoralize these people even more. It has just been an outright disaster, one after another in less than 9 months. Absolutely amazing, how much damage Biden has done in a very short period of time. I want to move on to President Trump for a little bit because he's suing Twitter because he wants his Twitter account back. Okay, I mean, once again, he deserves the right to have the Twitter account back. I'm just not sure I want to see a lot of his tweets, to be honest. But whatever, that's Trump. And then the other side of it too is that, throwing out, testing the waters on 2024, saying that, if DeSantis runs, he would easily beat him. I mean, and you've mentioned how far ahead Trump has been in some polling with that, though it's very early polling. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, what are Trump's chances of actually suing Twitter and actually getting the account back? I don't know.
Well, I think his point is not that, to get a court to award him his account back. I think his point is, Twitter kicking him off makes Twitter an editor and not a benign, printer of content, right? Twitter's supposed to be a forum, right? Everybody comes in and gives their opinion, and Twitter is thus not responsible for any libel or slander that goes on in those opinions, right? Because, hey, we just let everybody have their say. Well, if you're going to choose who has their say and it's going to be based on politics like this, then you're the Washington Post. You're an editor, okay? If you're an editor, you're subject to being sued for libel. So I think the point Trump is trying to make here is they can't have it both ways. Either they are editors and they can kick me off, or it's a forum and you don't have any right to kick me off, right? It's the same as, saying black people can't eat in your restaurant, right? We have an accommodation that we let all the public in except for certain people we don't like, right? That's the same argument. So, I don't know what'll happen, but I think that where he's going is, Section 230. As for what he said, I think he was asked, what would happen if you went against DeSantis? He's about 54 points ahead of DeSantis among Republican voters. DeSantis is the favorite if you take Trump out of the equation. DeSantis says all he wants to do is run for re-election in 2022, serve the people of Florida. That puts him out in 2026, which seems to me about perfect timing to become president in 2028. And I think that he has made up his mind that, he can wait till 2028 and not go against Trump. I think there's virtually no chance Trump does not win. Does not run. If he does run, he will be the Republican nominee. Almost, I doubt anybody, even wants to seriously go against him. And, I think he will be a formidable candidate, especially given that, everything went to hell in a handbasket the minute he walked off the job. So, especially if he were running against Biden, I don't think Biden could win that race again.
Yeah, I think ahead.
It's a long time till then. He could totally recover and be doing great. But what's in front of us right now, I don't see how Biden could win re-election.
Yeah, and DeSantis, realistically, for me, if I were him, I would probably say something along those lines anyways, that you're running for re-election. Focus on that re-election right now. We remind, remind the voters that you're there for them in Florida. If 2024 looks like a shot, then you can take it if there's a reasonable chance of doing it. But focus on Florida. That's where you're doing, keep the governor's, mansion in Republican hands because it's an important state. And then kind of let's see where it goes. Trump is definitely a force. We've said this many times. He casts a very long shadow in the Republican Party. He runs, nobody will dare challenge him. Nobody with half a brain would challenge him for the nomination 2024. And it would be a fascinating election. I've already made no bones about the fact that I have issues with Trump's personality or his behavior. But what he did as a president overall on policy and things like that was remarkable. Things got done. So on that side, he accomplished a lot of things. And, a Biden-Trump rematch would be really interesting just from the fact that so many people were so anti-Trump that last time around. Biden got a lot of votes he would not have gotten otherwise. I think a lot of those people have remorse. I think there are a lot of Democrats already out there that are not happy with the way things are going, and they wouldn't support Biden. Harris doesn't have a shot at this right now either.
I think they've moved on from Harris. I think she's out of the picture for a while.
Yeah, and so then they have to find someone else. Biden's problem, obviously, going forward in 2024 is just at his age. I mean, this is going to work against both candidates to a certain degree in terms of age.
Well, his age and his presidency is aligning with Jimmy Carter's.
Yeah, right. I mean,
the country.
And you're going we'll have seen enough of him on the mental acuity basis. All the thing, he's already stumbled so many times.
Did you see that he did not know that France had recalled its ambassador? John Kerry had to tell him that.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, Kerry said, we had to explain to him, and he didn't get it at first, right? It's like, huh? I mean, that is our oldest ally, right? France was an ally before England. You don't know where that stands, right? You don't know they recalled their ambassador. They're living in a bubble. They're trying to prop this guy up. But the point you make, I think, is really good. Is that if they ran again, and lots could change between now and 2024. But if they ran against each other again, a lot of people who voted for Biden would vote for Trump because they would not have seen any mean tweets in a while to make them angry, right? But what they would have seen, it would have been, one president was competent, the economy worked, the border was closed, energy was cheap, groceries were affordable. We weren't trying to have multiple $1 trillion pieces of legislation coming down the pipe every 5 minutes, right? And we had some stability, and the world may not like us, but they feared us, and that's about all you can really expect. So, I think that a lot of votes would flip easily enough to flip the results of the election. All
right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, let's see what is on here that we did not. Come on, thing. I guess we should talk about the Let's Go Brandon. Oh, no. Okay, one thing. Okay, so did you see the Let's Go Brandon?
Yes.
So there, a guy named Brandon, somebody won a NASCAR race. Where were they? Florida or somewhere?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the crowd is chanting F Joe Biden, and there's a local reporter interviewing the guys. He goes, "Yeah, they're all Let's Go Brandon." I'm like, they're not saying Let's Go Brandon. Like, now I get, you don't want to go on TV and say that Earth.
Yeah.
You can't claim that it's something like that. The other thing that I wanted to cover on here, though, is dark day for democracy when the United States Attorney General says he's going to investigate people testifying at school board meetings for domestic terrorism. That is an attack on their political enemies. That is un-American. That is despicable, and he should resign for that.
Yeah, no, it's just bad. I mean, yeah, and I'll say one thing, but there's been this flurry of F Biden things going around. I think particularly at these NASCAR type races and things like that.
And football,
yeah,
football brought him out, man.
Yeah, and look, I just think this is just not the appropriate thing to do. I mean, this does not help our side at all to have these people out there, because the media focuses on this and this crude behavior and stuff like that. I don't support or endorse this in any way, shape, or form. It's bad, all the way around. They have the right to say it, but I just think it's terrible for them to be doing it. And I did want to throw in this one other thing, only because I heard it this morning when I was listening to a podcast. I was catching up on these Facebook hearings and things like this, but the Senator Blumenthal, he went. This was incredible. I mean, I had not seen this initially, but listening to this, these people on this podcast in particular, they're Democrats, right? I mean, they're basically they're not conservatives. They tend to be liberal Democrats on this tech podcast. And even they were like, they couldn't figure out on this Blumenthal thing where he kept asking the Facebook thing about, are you going to get rid of Finsta? Well, Finsta
commit to stopping it.
Right. But Finsta's fake Instagram. I mean, these are accounts that the kids are creating, private accounts. They want to share things. This is not an official Facebook, Instagram, anything. And this person, and she said she tried to point that out to them, right? And they still kind of like missed it. I mean, he apparently.
I'm not sure what you're asking for. It's like, here's your chance to shut up, Senator.
Yeah, and these guys had said on the podcast that I guess at the beginning he had actually read like what the definition of Finsta was, and yet he got into this thing trying to badger the Facebook person saying, "Well, you're going to stop this this product." It was like, what are you talking about? That's not our product.
Yeah.
Well, I have no love lost for Mark Zuckerberg and a lot of other things and stuff like that.
Or Denang Dick for sure.
Yeah, right. But for heaven's sakes, I mean, it's like if you're gonna do this, I mean, who's responsible for this? Some staffer just totally screwed this up. And does Blumenthal not realize what he's been reading? I don't get it.
Now, let me ask you one quick one though before we go. Evan McMullin to challenge Mike Lee.
That came up today.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I don't know why Evan McMullin thinks he's electable to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any undercurrent of politics in Utah against Mike Lee?
There may be a small, because there's always people in Utah who can be swayed one way or the other, but it's going to be very minimal.
I thought Mike Lee landed on the right. He agreed with Trump when Trump was right, and was on his principles, and was able to stand apart a little bit when he wasn't. Which I think that's what you have to do in Utah. I think that's just the way Utah works.
Yeah. No, I mean, I look. I mean, if McMullin is going to run, you got to run against Romney. Okay, you don't run against Lee. I mean, against Romney, he might he can probably bring a lot of elected. I just don't see him doing this with Lee at all. But I think this is Evan McMullin trying to get his name back in the media and maybe looking for something down the line a little bit later. But this campaign is not going to go anywhere, at all. I can't imagine this has any legs at all. All right, everyone. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Appreciate it. As always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again next week.